Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Zach Babcock, and you're listening to the Head Smack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Povolni, and I am excited to have another conversation with a misfit. I have Zach Babcock with me, and he is a man with a great story. He is an underdog and an alpha underdog, and he started off growing up in juvies, rehabs, psych wards, and so on, and doing over 5 years in prison to completely transforming his life, becoming a man of God, devoted husband, father, friend, and successful entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Zach Babcock. How you doing, man?
Oh, man. Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, and that's quite a bio and quite a story there. And so I'm looking forward to hearing part of it. Part of what I do with my podcast is I love hearing people's origin stories, and so you can start as far back as you want. I'd love to hear about the origins of Mr. Zach Babcock. So start wherever you want.
Absolutely, for sure. I'll give you a Cliff Notes version, man, and we can always unpack more. I'm an open book. I grew up in Ferguson, Missouri. My dad died. My parents had gotten a divorce. I learned a lot of stuff, the last few years, kind of going back and studying. But it was crazy how they even got together in the first place. But long story short, they split up because my dad was seeing other women. My mom ended up cheating on my dad after that. So like crazy way, example for myself to get right out the gate. I'm a young kid or whatnot. Dad and mom split. He moves out and then dies shortly after. And like everything, and I'm 7 years old, and everything after that was like traumatic experience after traumatic experience after traumatic experience. What you call it? I went to school. Like I was always getting in trouble in school. I could never focus. I could focus, but I just didn't focus on shit that didn't interest me. You know what I'm saying? And school just wasn't one of them. And I was smoking weed all the time to like cope with losing my dad, because I didn't cope with that the right way. I guess I wasn't shown the right way how to deal with it, but I had stuffed everything. I didn't even cry when he died. Literally, just I remember sitting in that hospital.
Wow.
And my sister and mom were crying in the room, but I wasn't. And it was like I was like splitting myself off, psychologically. There's a lot of stuff on that or whatnot because my ego didn't know how to handle that at that time. I was 7 years old, and so it was like stuffing it. And so I got stuffed for decades, man. And I grew up hating my dad just because of the example.
So how does a 7-year-old get weed?
I wasn't smoking weed at 7. I started smoking weed at 9, a couple years after my dad died.
Oh,
but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But still at 9 years old,
Yeah,
how's a 9-year-old start smoking weed, right? Growing up in Ferguson, Missouri, it's just not a great place. Grow up, I was hanging out with my sister. She's 3.5 years older than me, and she was hanging out with people older than her. So I'm like, 9 years old, hanging out with 16 and 18-year-olds a lot of time.
Wow.
What do you call it? Yeah, man. So I remember before I ever went into the family court system, because I wasn't going to school and I was smoking weed. And my mom was, trying to help me, trying to do what she could do to help. She was acting out of her own best intentions to get me that help. Even though, what she did didn't actually help. It actually ended up traumatizing me more in a way. She had put me into a rehab before I even got into the court system. I went into the rehab, 9 years old. I got into a fight. I was the youngest kid in there. I got beat up, of course, because I started the fight with a bigger kid or whatever. And they suggested that they put me in a psych ward. And you know what I'm saying? Like all I was a kid looking for attention, looking for.
So that was just because you.
Yeah, all I was a kid looking for attention and love, you know what I'm saying? Looking for it in the wrong places, but just didn't know how to cope with shit or whatnot. So they suggested that they put me in a psych ward, and she agreed to it, man. And dude, Paul, in this psych ward, I literally thought I was going to die 24/7 in there. I was in there for 5 days, and it felt like eternity. It felt like I was going to die in there. Anything you probably ever read about a psych ward is true. It's probably even worse. The staff physically and mentally abuse you and verbally abuse you. Dude, I got woken up all hours throughout the night with them taking my blood and then shooting me up with all types of drugs. And I was lethargic, in and out of consciousnness. Kids are like screaming or laughing in the corner and just like fighting each other. Like it's just pure chaos. And it was just Yeah, a straight fight or flight
And were
response.
you by
Yeah, I
yourself?
was in there by myself,
Was it like a
being abused and
wow?
whatnot. So that that took a little took a little toll, and that's a very traumatic experience or whatnot. And I'm growing up thinking this shit's normal, that everybody goes through this shit. I thought it was normal my whole
Right.
entire life until I really started studying trauma and started working on myself or whatnot. But yeah, so it was a crazy childhood, in and out of juvenile detention centers, boys' homes, rehabs, um, you name it. And then I graduated and did over 5 years of my life in prison as an adult. And I got out, and I always had good intentions, but I just made poor decisions and didn't know any better. And and at the same time, I knew better. Let me take that. I want to backtrack on that. Okay, so I knew better. I know what's right or
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just had a lot of trauma shit going on with me, and made poor decisions. Because you can't control what happens to you as a kid. But as an adult, it is your responsibility to go back and to heal yourself, and your responsibility to take care of yourself and to get yourself right. So I had to backtrack that. But yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, was there any light at all during that time? Was there any hope given to you?
Yeah, like my mom, even though she put me in that place, like she did it out of love. She was trying to help me, and she always was there for me, and and told me she loved me all the time, and I genuinely felt loved by her, and she could have done things a lot differently, looking back, she was
Right.
real
Right.
gullible in a sense, man. Like she moved us to Ferguson, Missouri after her and my mom dad broke up. Uh, and that's like not a great neighborhood, and we didn't have to move there. Like we weren't like poor, we weren't rich, but we weren't poor, and we didn't have to live in
Yeah.
Ferguson, Missouri. So it was, but she, that was her decision, and she did that. Maybe it was her life, and that's where she wanted to move her family and her kids or whatnot. But moved into a really bad neighborhood, and then
Right. Right.
put me in the
Yeah.
institutions and stuff. I felt, because she was trying to do that, out of intentional love for me and trying to get me help, but I felt abandoned. I felt abandoned by my own mom, and I felt like I
Right.
wasn't good enough to be my mom's son. That's what the message was communicated to
Yeah.
me, and I was thrown to the wolves in the psych ward. You know what I'm saying? To fend for myself. That's how I felt. And it
Yeah.
is what it is. And I've done a lot of healing since then,
Yeah.
man. But yeah, long story short, did over 5 years of my life in prison. I went back to prison 20 days before my twin sons were born. That's when I changed everything. I said, I'm heading in another direction. Got out, turned my whole life around, built a successful business, was doing over 500,000 a year gross in a podcast agency with margins north of 40%. Yet I was miserable inside, man. I was winning all this time, and I would be on top of the world for all but 20 seconds, and I'd be like, what's next? What's next? And none of this was never good enough. And I knew when I had got to that point where I'd moved my family out of my old neighborhood into Wentzville, Missouri, which is a nice neighborhood compared to Ferguson, Missouri. And what do you call it? When I had gotten there, and when I had hosted my first mastermind with 10 entrepreneurs from all over the US, and we're just killing it in business, all this stuff, and I was still like, what's next? And I wasn't satisfied. I didn't feel like I was good enough, and all these things. I knew something wasn't right, man. And it was in 2021, 33 years old. And that's when I started to go deep and work on myself. I'm 36 now, but I really started doing that inner work, man, and going to face those demons.
Yeah. So you said you were about to go to prison, or you were in danger of going to prison when your twins were born, or you went
I
there.
went back to prison.
I missed
Yeah.
that.
So I had already did
Okay.
over 5 years of my life in prison, did 4 years straight. And I had been in and out a couple times before I did that 4 year stretch. But I had got out for almost 2 years and was doing good for the most part, but I was drinking every day. But I was like not breaking the law or doing stuff. But I was basically self-medicating with alcohol, and that was my vice and whatnot. But I had went back though 20 days before my twin sons were born for an 8-month setback, and that's when I woke up in prison. That's when I was like, I'm done, man. I'm done with this life for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Now, was it just kind of a moment of, they're laying in your cell, where just that head smack moment of, I've got to change. Like, I've got twin kids. I've got to get my life together. Like, what was the the catalyst for that
Yeah.
moment, aside from the twins? Or was the twins the biggest catalyst? Like you were laying there and you're like, reality check, like, what am I doing?
Yeah, man, I've had quite a few head smack moments in my life, and that was definitely one of them. And for sure, because
Yeah.
I had went out that night and got belligerent drunk. Just at this point in time in my life, I'll give you a little bit more of the story. But I had gotten out of prison after doing, I just finished a over 4 year stretch, flat, and I went away, at 19 years old, came home at 23, and it was 2008 when I went away, 2012 when I came back. So they didn't have smartphones, like we had flip phones when I went away, and like we had baggy clothes was in style when I went away. And then I came home and it was a complete culture shock, and
Yeah.
everybody's wearing clothes that fit again, and we got these devices that I didn't even know how to make a phone call on that are supposed to be phones. And
Wow.
I remember getting out and I was doing good, and I got a job at a bar back as a bar and grill, and staying out of trouble or whatnot. And that's what my mindset was then. It was like, hey, I just got to do something to stay out of trouble and work a job or whatever. And was doing good, but then I got hired at this clothing store at the Buckle, and I got hired there because I shopped there all the time. And then I got promoted because I sold 3,000 one day, and the whole store did 9,000 that entire day. And I was only there for 6 hours. So they promoted me. Bam. I was thinking like, yes, I'm moving forward. I'm advancing my career. I'm putting my whole life behind me. Yada, yada. Awesome. And then a couple of days after that, bam.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Babcock, we looked in and seen you're a convicted felon, and yeah, we got to let you go. And so, like all that hope was like diminished. And I chose in that moment to let that defeat me in that moment. And I chose to start drinking heavily, man. And I started binge drinking, and I went out that night to that bar, got belligerent drunk, and ended up trying to start a fight with one of my friends there. Whatnot, got the police called on me, and they came and locked me up, and I had a warrant out of parole violation for a DWI that I had. So yeah, they sent me back to prison for an 8-month setback, and I woke up in that jail cell the next day from that blackout. Lights shining and it's bright, got a headache, back's hurting because you're sleeping on a metal bunk and just feeling like you got hit in the face with a shovel.
Right.
And then I realize that that I'm in jail, and I call Stephanie asking her to come bail me out. And then she tells me, hey, they're not letting me bail you out. You got a warrant. You're going back to prison. And that's when it was like that moment right there was like getting stabbed in the stomach.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to miss my kids being born. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. That was a head smack moment. That's right there.
So what did you start doing in prison?
Dude, I didn't know how I was going to turn my life around. The only thing I knew was that I was going to have to change my people, places, and things. I didn't know anything else. And I just started from right there, man. And I just stuck to myself. I had friends and stuff in prison. I still, when I went back, I still like talked to the people and went out in the yard and worked out and did my normal stuff, but I didn't go out and do all it was focused. Like, hey man, I'm doing my time and I'm getting back home to my family.
Yeah. Did you seek inspiration? Like you mentioned that after prison you became an entrepreneur. Did some of that learning or that mindset shift happen while you're in prison, or did that all happen afterwards?
Man, I've always been like that. So like my first job was at McDonald's at 16, and I lasted half a shift and then pulled a Scarface from the movie Half Baked and was like, F you, F you, F you, you're cool and I'm out. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I always got jobs where I would go like door to door, setting up like free consultations for some thermal windows, siding gutters, whatever. Stuff like that, sales commission base, because I could make more. And I still had a cap, but it wasn't capped like you're getting paid $7.50 an hour or whatever the minimum wage was at that time. It was like, hey, you can get paid this minimum wage plus if you go and sell this, and this. So that was always appealed more to me. That's where I came from. And I used to hustle little stuff like Pokemon cards in school or whatever. So I always had that. But for me, what it was where I realized that I was going to have to do something different was when I got out for that 2 years before I went back for that DWI. When I got rejected at the Buckle, like I'm so grateful for that, because like at that time it defeated me, but like okay, that same experience led me to being here right now, and going through all the stuff that I did, learning that I can go and create whatever I want. You know what I'm saying? So grateful for it now looking back, right? But when I was in prison, though, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get a good job. So my plan was, and this is 2014 too, and so Michael Brown's situation just happened in Ferguson, and I'm sitting there like got because we got TVs and stuff in there, and I'm looking at my city burn on CNN and all these BS media sites that I never trusted ever in my life before it was even cool not to trust them. But what do you call it? So I'm calling my mom and stuff, and making sure she's all right. But like, my whole thing was like, all right, well, when I get out, I'm going to make these bracelets that say I Heart Ferguson on them and these t-shirts, and I'm going to go door to door selling them. And that never panned out and it never happened. But that was like the plan that I had in prison. Never ended up doing any of that.
But that's the entrepreneurial mind, and that's sometimes the ADD mind that, you have these brilliant ideas that keep you up at night, and sometimes they come to fruition and sometimes they don't. But your mind's constantly going, right?
Yeah.
And so what was the first thing that you did post-prison that kind of gave you that hope of success?
Yeah, well, I got right out and people, places, and things. That's all I knew. So I wasn't hanging out with anybody that was doing that old life. Like I was hanging out with people that had their stuff together. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. I didn't know if you can cuss or not, but have your stuff together.
No, that's fine.
And so I got out and I stayed. I knew good habits, so I knew that was going to be people, places, things. Good habits is the things. And so I was working out at the gym consistently every day. And I ran into a guy one time, and he was in there asking me if I wanted to try some drink. And no, he reached out. No, I'm sorry. He reached out to me on an Instagram post that I posted, asking me if I wanted to try some drink. And I was like, nah, dude. But I don't know why, but I was like, nah, dude. But like, is there a way that I could sell it, make some money too, or something? Because I just asked him that bluntly, and he's like, yeah, man. And it was a network marketing thing. And he's like, yeah, man. It ended up being Zango, and so So I ended up getting into this in network marketing, and dude, so many people talk smack about network marketing, and rightfully so. There's a lot of whatever, but that's everywhere, But dude, I'm grateful for network marketing, dude, because dude, I got in there and I went from zero to making nearly $2,000 a month within my first 6 months. And for a guy coming out of prison, like I was making more money than most of the people I went to high school with, and I couldn't even get a job, when I first came out of prison. I was trying to find something just to give me something to get this t-shirt and wristband idea going, right? And but I got into network marketing and was making nearly $2,000 a month off of residual. So I was like, hell yes. And it introduced me to personal development. That's when I started reading, self-development books and all this stuff. So it was cool, man. But that was the moment, though, is when I had the success.
And this was all the drinks?
Yeah, with the Zango drinks. And Zango's not even a company no more. It
Yeah,
used to be.
Wow. Yeah. Network marketing does get a bad rap. It's not all bad. I mean, there's people that abuse pretty much every industry and every strata of life and whatever. And so, it's not all bad. And so, okay, so you're launching. You did this drink thing. You finally like have hope, and you're like, okay, this is my thing. I've finally found where I'm flowing. So what were some of those books? You said you read some books that impacted you. What were some of those books that you read that kind of started shifting your brain from where it was, from the abuse and the pain and the hurt and the rejection and the turmoil? What were some of those books that you read that really started impacting?
All right. So from right here, where we're talking about when I was in network marketing, before I left network marketing and built my own business, I wasn't thinking about none of that stuff. I was thinking about success and like growth and like, entrepreneurial type things. I wasn't thinking about healing up unresolved trauma, or that wasn't even a thought at this point in my life. And really all I did was switch from before I've lived on edge for so long, man. And before, I lived on edge and would never was feeling enough, never felt like I was good enough, and I was looking for all this in all these external places, and in the wrong external places, and drugs, violence, women, getting in trouble, just whatever, stuff like that, getting that adrenaline hit, that rush there from all those bad things. And then I switched my life around when my twin sons were born. I said, I'm done with all that. But all I did was switch that to getting that from growing the business, and like crushing goals. And so I'd crush all these goals and getting all these hits, these these dopamine hits, from checking off the goals, right, and hitting that goal, hitting that goal and building it to this level. But it was all emptiness, man, because it was just like moving the goalpost. Because every time I would do it, all right, yeah, 20 seconds, and then 20 seconds later, what's next, man? Is that it? Is that it?
Right. The next hit.
Yeah. And so I went through that for the next few years. I was massively successful professionally, and from the outside looking in, everybody's like, man, this dude's killing it. This dude's was just in prison a couple of years, and now he's sitting down with Andy Frisella, Grant Cardone, and like in person, Dan Fleischman and Patrick Bet-David, like all these crazy big names and shit. Like this dude was just in prison a few years ago, and now he's got this podcast agency that he's kicking ass with and rubbing elbows with all these dudes. Like, how is he doing it? And I was miserable inside, dude. And then that in 2021, because this is 2017 when I was in network marketing. We fast forward all the way to 2021 after I built the business and went through this whole process of like, why am I not happy? I did I did everything that they said I'd never do, and I'm still not happy. And that's, in 2021 when I had that mastermind, and I left that mastermind and went directly to Sean Whalen's office at Lions Not Sheep to interview him on my podcast, and was still feeling like, I'm not happy, man. Like what the fuck's going on here? That's when I started like, all right, something's got to change. Something's not right with me inward, and I need to go and look into that further.
Yeah. And so, you were on these podcasts. Now, were they also guests on your podcast, or were you guests on their podcast?
They were mostly guests on my pod. I've been on quite a few big podcasts, like Bradley's Dropping Bombs, and I won't go down this up, but mostly on my podcast is what I would do is I would interview these big names on my podcast, and then I just keep that momentum going, and ask, another big name to keep that going, because it would help me, in a sense, grow my own brand, and then also grow our own podcast agency, because I was literally doing what we were helping people with.
Yeah. So you're finding all the success in doing podcasts and having, these big names, these people that, have their own channels as well, and you're rubbing shoulders with them. But did they know the turmoil that was going on inside of you? Did they recognize it, or was that something that you had learned to hide really well?
No, they didn't, because they had the same inner turmoil going on with themselves. Most of these super successful, highly driven, success at all costs, fucking quit being a bitch, go out, make it happen. Like that's who I was, and they're still got that going on too. Culture, that's where it comes from. Where dude, and it's dude, that can drive you and get you to very successful places. But then you get to a point where it's just like me. I hit like midlife. I'm 36, and like when you hit midlife, your whole world gets flipped. What's up, man? Your whole world gets flipped upside down. All these things that you thought were truths your whole life, like wow, and it's just like. So, and people call it a midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis, man. It's a midlife transition. It's literally part of the human psyche. Everybody's going to go through it. And, a lot of men go hit that part and they run from it. It's an opportunity for you to create who you want to be for the rest of your life, or to keep running stuff. So yeah, man, no, they didn't see it, and I'm pretty sure, not all of them were like that too. I don't want to say every single one of them, but like, come on now, there's like some of those dudes that I listed off, that they're kind of still in that,
Yeah.
And
there is an unhealthy version of hustle. I think hustle is good. I think hustle,
of course,
isn't a bad thing. But there's certainly an unhealthy where it's like, it's almost like what you had shared, that you hustle to the next dopamine rush, to the next dopamine rush, to the next, and you're not dealing with what you were dealing with all this other inner stuff, that it's like, no, I just ignore that because I'm going for the next hustle dopamine hit, and next hustle dopamine hit. I'm grinding, I'm getting up, I'm taking, whatever, ice baths, I'm doing, I'm doing all these, things to get that next shot of adrenaline and dopamine and satisfaction, but not dealing with something that is literally a ticking time bomb within you that you're just avoiding. You're extending the fuse. Maybe that's the way to put it. You're extending the fuse with all these activities, but you're not actually dealing with something that is going to blow up at some point on somebody, on some relationship, on some person, on something. And that's dangerous, right? And is that what you were feeling?
Dude, 1000%, man. Like you hit that on the money, man. It's like you said, a ticking time, or you just prolonging it. Like, dude, it like going back to even what I was talking about with hitting midlife. Like when you hit midlife, your shadow, it's harder to conceal your shadow. We all going around, everybody has a shadow, and your shadow is all the, I mean, you know what your shadow is, but like for listeners, like your shadow is everything that's unexpressed about you. And you have good qualities about you, and you got bad qualities from, I don't want to say it, from society's standpoint, you have good qualities about you and bad qualities about you based on society's standpoint. And we all have animalistic qualities about ourselves. We're all capable of very dark, violent things. You know what I'm saying? And not even just violent things, but just your shadow qualities, anything that's unexpressed. And as you hit that midlife, it becomes so hard to conceal that. It literally, your shadow comes out. Even what worked to get you here no longer is going to work to get you there at this point. And that's when you got to, go in, like you said, go inward and incorporate that shadow with the rest of your ego, or else you're going to be you are in that crisis. You are in that person that continues to drown himself in all the vices and ends up dead or just miserable. You know what I'm saying? At least from my own experience in that regard. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man. It's like until you go out and deal with that stuff, man, you have to bring, one of my favorite, it's not even in the Bible, it's in the book of Thomas. But Jesus said, if you do not bring forth what is inside you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. But if you bring forth what is inside you, what you bring forth will save you. And I might have had that backwards, and he said the last part first or whatever, but basically said that exact thing in there. And that's like, it's so true, man. It will literally destroy you if you don't go.
Yeah, well, I mean, he said the truth. Yeah, and he said the truth will set you free, and that is absolutely relevant for everything. Truth is freeing, and when you don't deal with that shadow stuff, and with that, maybe it can be called the carnal nature, the carnal side of us, the side of us that's unsubmitted to God. That stuff can be dangerous, if we don't get that under control. And so, and I think I think it was Epicurus that might have even said the way up and the way down are the same thing.
Yeah.
And basically the way I read that is, if you do things the same way that gets you to a certain point, at some point, if you don't change and evolve and get better, that the way up and the way down are the same thing. The way up is going to get you to a certain point, and it'll also take you down if you keep doing the same thing without changing. And so, so you're at this point, you've kind of hitting these good numbers. You do this mastermind. Is this mastermind around doing podcasting?
Oh, the mastermind that I was hosting. Yeah, it was through our podcast agency and coaching. Yeah.
And so, you hit this point where you're doing the mastermind, and that was a turning point, a head smack moment for you. Is this all under Alpha Underdog, or is this under a different moniker?
Business? Yeah. Alpha Underdog is what I do now. Alpha Underdog wasn't even there yet.
Okay. So the turning point that happened after this mastermind, was that just kind of another one of those, like you were sitting in the cell and you thought about your twins? Was that just one of those moments?
Another head smack moment?
Another head smack. Yeah. That was just like a hyper realization of the situation that you're in, or did something happen, or was there some sort of an other thing that prompted that moment?
No, 1000%, man. Quite a few, man. So that led up to it. Quite a few head smack moments that led up to it. One was interviewing Tucker Max on my podcast, and it's on my podcast still. And first part of the interview is like, awesome. We're talking about business, this and that. And then I started talking about personal stuff. And he basically called me out on some stuff, and it was legit. And he was basically, because I was going and I was telling him about how my mom was a great mom. She always had my back. She was always there for me, but it helped me build up my confidence. But then she also kind of wasn't, because it was also the stuff where, where she put me in the boys' home, stuff like that. And he's like, wait a minute, you just contradicted yourself or whatnot. And my immediate gut reaction was like to be like, man, fuck you, dude. Like, you don't know me, dude. Like, you don't even, that was my immediate gut reaction. But I was like, no, dude, like, what if he's right? What if there's some stones here you haven't unturned? What if what if this stings because it's right? And so I had this,
Right.
and I was so grateful that I had the self-awareness to realize that in that moment, because a lot of people don't, man, and grateful that I didn't run away from it, man, because a lot of people do. And I started questioning that, and that's one of the head smack moments, and that was right before the mastermind. And when I had the mastermind and was like, dude, like, I was like, that's when that at the mastermind was like, that's when I realized, I was like, dude, it doesn't matter how big I fucking grow this thing, I'm always going to feel like this. This is something with me. Like,
Yeah.
there's something inside that I need to go to work on. I don't know what, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that was like that moment for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Just extending the fuse. And so what did you do, man? What did you do to cut the fuse?
This was in January of 2021, and all the way up until long story short, I did a bunch of different things. One of the things that moved the needle for me a lot was the MDMA assisted psychotherapy that I did. So I went and started researching trauma, everything I could about it extensively, the effects and stuff, whatnot, and read some good books, whatnot on there. And I was looking into plant medicine as well. And then I had Dr. Dan Engel on my podcast. He wrote a book called A Dose of Hope, because he does these MDMA assisted psychotherapy. He administers these, and right now they have a 70% cure rate in clinical trials with MDMA assisted psychotherapy for veterans and PTSD. 70% cure rate with PTSD, which is crazy. You look at everything else, nothing even comes close to that. Nothing even comes close to it. And this is in clinical trials right now. So I had him on the pod. So after I read his book, and then I was able to get him on the podcast and be able to pick his brain even further after all the other, studying that I was doing upon this. That's when I chose. And, I also want to say a disclaimer, man, like I'm not a medical perfect. I'm just sharing my experience with what I did. And I'm not telling you what to do or this right's for anybody, you got to decide that on your own. But, after me doing all that, I just decided like, all right, I'm going to go do this stuff and try and see what's about. And dude, when I say, I had spent my whole life, doing the wrong things, and then I turned it to a positive with all the business things, but it still was like a ticking time bomb, the fuse. Well, this was the first time I ever had any release in my life, man. I went, you go and you take your dose. You have the blindfold, so you can go inward, and then you play a little music or whatnot, just the soothing whatever. But all it does is, a best way I can explain it, man, you feel good as hell on it. For me, I felt good as hell on it, and I also MDMA. I also did that stuff back when I was a teenager too, so I wasn't scared to do it. I did it partying wise when I was a kid. This was intentional, completely different. And so you feel good on it, but man, it cracks the psyche open and allows all of these suppressed traumatic experiences that your ego literally has suppressed to keep away from you, because it's thinking it's protecting you, and it's literally stored in your stomach and stuff. That's where it's stored at. Well, all this stuff is bubbling up to the surface, and I'm able to relive it right there, and more importantly, feel the emotions that I did not feel in the moment because it was so traumatic. So and you don't feel those, and you're not able to feel that, so it can pass and you can let it go and shit. I know it sounds crazy, but I was able to feel a lot of this stuff that was coming up, man, and stuff that I had forgotten all about, like, so that the trauma was literally being released through somatic release through my jaws. My jaws were chomping down, like, but my teeth, it was crazy. And then, I was having muscle spasms in my calves. It looks like alien fingers were coming through my calves because it's the muscle spasm from the trauma release. And then, threw up a little bit and had a little bit of diarrhea after the whole session or whatnot. And that's literally the trauma being released from your stomach coming out. And then that's just the beginning, bro. You don't just go and do some drug or whatever and you're fix it. No, it's not like that at all. You do this medicine, and then it brings all that stuff up, and now you have the self-awareness of it now, and now that's where the integration work. And that's a little bit long. We could get deeper into that, but stuff like that is like basically like letting go of resentments, grudges, and things like that, like I did with my dad, and writing letters and burning them, crying, getting shit out, and burning the letters and releasing it. A whole bunch of stuff there, man.
And so it went all the way back to you not crying in the passing of your father.
Yeah, dude, I've
from
cried.
there, or did it go earlier?
I've cried so much about my dad since 33, dude, and I didn't my whole life, and I still feel weird crying in front of anyone. Like, I don't like crying in front of anyone, but dude, you got to. And dude, we're men. Like, dude, just because we're just conditioned as a society as men, like you're supposed to be tough and not cry or whatever. Like, dude, we feel all the emotions. Just we're human, all right. And you got to get that stuff out, man. And dude, feels so good getting that shit out, you know. And yeah, I still feel weird doing it in front of people. I don't. I go in another room and get it out, you know, whatever. Do what you got to do, but hey, it is what it is, man.
Yeah. Is that where Alpha Underdog was born?
Yes. Through all this. Yeah, absolutely. So I've had this, man. I said this on my podcast the whole entire time, even before, because I had my podcast before my podcast agency became successful. And I said it the whole entire time on my podcast, like, that's not the thing that's the stepping stone to the next thing. And what my purpose was, like, I wanted to achieve a 9% recidivism rate nationwide in the US. Recidivism is people going back to prison within a 3-year after they get released, and it's different based on in each state, but they're all like in the 30s and 40s. They're up there, but not all of them, but a lot of them are up there. And so that was like, I always said that was a goal, but I just didn't know how I was going to do that, Paul. I didn't know, like, how was I going to achieve that? I was like, yeah, I could connect with guys coming out of prison, but man, I can't do the work for them, and I can connect with guys that are ready to do the work, but like, how are we going to do this? And through me doing this, not just with plant medicine, man, because I said that was just one of the tools. Another big tool that's even more powerful than that is Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oh my God, I started doing that. And
wow,
that has helped me so much with my mental health, and so much with my unresolved trauma. Like, such a great, powerful tool. Oh my God, I'll get into that bit.
Through the teachings, like what specifically around jiu-jitsu helped with the inner stuff?
Breaking down the ego,
the physical discipline.
Yeah, the physical discipline, breaking down of the ego, like all of it, dude. All of the teaching of the martial art itself. You know, what you learn about yourself through that. Just everything, the mind, body. It's just mind, body, and soul, man. It truly is, man. It's such a great practice. I highly recommend some type of martial arts for everyone.
So what does it mean to be an alpha underdog?
Man, an alpha underdog is a humble man of God that is a confident, humble man of God that does whatever it takes. All right. So before, and I want to explain to before I answer, I want to explain who I was, the identity of who I was before who I am now. Right. Because that's what I believe life is about, recreating yourself, you know, as you go through different seasons. Right. And, who I was before this, man, I was the guy that was out to prove everybody wrong. I was like, all right, I'm going to do whatever it takes to go out there and prove because that's how I felt. Like, I felt like everybody was like, oh, you're never going to be able to go and build a business. You're never going to be able to bounce back or come into prison. Really, you know, what I found was that was really just me not feeling like I was good enough, because I'm going to prove them wrong, you know? And like, that was really where that stemmed from, was just because I didn't feel like I was good enough, and other things too. And I didn't feel like I was good enough. And I feel like I was worthy of being loved, and all these other things. And Alpha Underdog, man, it's like, I don't need that external. I'm not looking externally for that fulfillment. That all that has to come within. You can't get that fulfillment from external stuff. You're in this. You came in this vessel alone. You're leaving alone. This world alone. You're leaving alone. And people, I tried to find that fulfillment in external things my whole entire life, whether it was drugs, violence, women, to building a business, being successful, crushing goals, whatever. And it just doesn't happen. So an alpha underdog is a confident, battle-tested, humble man of God, committed to doing whatever it takes to reach his potential in life. And that's what an alpha underdog is. And it's not some dude that's, oh, I'm an alpha and I'll get shit done. No, that's far from it. Even though alpha underdog does go and get shit done, he committed to a life of excellence and hitting that potential. It's not about that. A lot of times it's more of, you know, I could come out and compact from from a compassionate standpoint or from an empathetic standpoint, you know. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble here, but yeah, a lot of people got the wrong meaning when it comes to alpha man.
No. This is good. Yeah, this is good. So with alpha underdog, they almost seem like contradictory terms because before your mastermind that you had, that was a turning point. You were around alpha type people, but they had an inner underdog, inner part of them that wasn't quite what it needed to be. And then before you went to prison, and then in prison, you were kind of the alpha underdog, right? You didn't feel very alpha about yourself. And so it's kind of an interesting contrast of bringing those two together and finding the balance between those, because neither one is healthy on its own, right? To be just this alpha, rah, dominate, rah, whatever, hustle, grind, power, rah.
Yep.
And then, or just having this underdog of, woe is me, poor me, I'll never make it, me, I'll never succeed, I don't have what it takes, and so I think either one of those extremes is unhealthy. And I love that you've combined the two and said that, you might be an underdog, but you could still be successful. You might feel like you're an underdog, but if you get the inner work done, if you make the right decisions, then you could reach these heights that you never imagined. Am I reading that right?
That's pretty spot on, I would say. It's cool that you even that you noticed that because I didn't say anything, but they are contrasting and purposely, because like it throws like alpha underdog. It's like wait a minute, right? Because underdog is supposed to be like the person that people are counting out, doesn't have a shot to win, right? Like, oh, there's no way, this is underdog. Like they're counting them out. And then, like you said, the alpha is like the person that people look at and be like, oh, that's the person that's going to win. It's the top dog, right? And so combine them, but yeah, it's
right.
it's the whole, right?
Right. So when you're helping men, and now is your primary focus on men right now, and working with them and helping them get through some of that shadow stuff, some of that dark stuff?
So I don't. So this is exactly what it is. Alpha Underdog, it's an apparel company, right? And what we do is how we help men is $1 of every so if somebody goes and buys a hoodie and a hat and a shirt, that's 3 different products. So every time somebody buys a product, we put $1 to this program. So that's 3 products, it's $3 goes to that. What we're doing is we're helping 10,000 alpha men, which is veterans, first responders, and ex-convicts, go through our year-long trauma therapy program. And that can include plant medicine, but it doesn't have to be plant medicine. That can include jiu-jitsu, but it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu. But we have a program of things a year long that that they go through. And this ain't even built yet. This is literally ground zero. Like I literally just launched the Alpha Underdog. So Alpha Underdog is built in the program, but we're literally ground zero. I just signed I got 2 partners. Cody, who's a strategic advisor, who's been in e-commerce. I don't know nothing about e-commerce. I had a podcast agency. E-commerce is a completely different animal, Cody's been there, done that. He's built multi-million-dollar outdoor apparel brands, Bucks of Milwaukee, Bucks of America, 2 of his. So he knows the game. He's our strategic advisor. And then Mike, he's my dude. He's the integrator. He's the guy. Like I'm the ideas guy and the build the culture guy and the CEO, the visionary guy. Mike's our COO that does the stuff that.
Yeah.
So we just came together. We're getting this all. This is like cool because this is like ground zero or whatnot. And I love the process of me being able to go out here and document it from ground up.
So I want to give you a moment to share, to first of all to speak to the alpha, and then to speak to the underdog. And what would you encourage? Because you've felt like both, right? You've been both in an unhealthy way at some point. Speak first to the alpha. What would you tell them on this side of where you're at? And then speak to the underdog, and what would you tell them on this side of where you're at?
Dude, this is so cool. Like, this is a cool question, man. Like, I appreciate it for real. Like, I've never been asked something like that, though, but that's cool. So the alpha, I would say to him, you can't pour all of your energy into one area of your life and expect to be a complete man. And I would say to the underdog, you got everything within you to be everything you ever want, to be exactly what you want to be everything that you need to be. You got it all within. It's all within. That's what I would say.
That's awesome, man. And so for people that want to get a hold of you, people that want to be a part of your world, that want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
ZachBabcock.com. I got all my social media on there. You can connect with me there. And got my newsletter if you want to get on that, to follow the journey and see our progress of how many men we're helping along the way. 10,000 plus is a goal. That's our mission. But yeah, it's all on ZachBabcock.com.
Man, that's an amazing mission. So what's a head smack that you wish I had asked you about, or a question you wish I had asked you about?
Man, rewinding, this one was such this. I'm gonna share this one because this is a tool that everybody could walk away with, and it's empowered me many times over. But I was rewinding back to when I did my 4-year stretch in prison before I got out for 2 years and went back before my twin sons were born. I was 21 at the time. I was 2 years into my 4-year stretch. I went in when I was 19, and I had gotten in trouble for getting tattoos. And I gotten wrote up a violation, and I had a bunch of different violations. So they threw me in the hole for having a bunch of violations, which is the hole is the prison that's inside of the prison. It's where you go when you get in trouble, when you're already in trouble. And so the hole is very little to no human interaction. You're locked down in a cell all day long. You get shower 3 times a week, and you get your trays brought to your door. So it's pretty miserable down there. It's cold and dark, depressing, dirty until you clean up your cell. Usually when you go in there, it's filthy until you clean it up yourself. But yeah, man, so you get the point. And I was in there, and it was I had to go in there for 60 days. And so I was 2 weeks into that 60-day, whatever you call sentence into the hole in prison or whatnot. And I had gotten called back to the captain's office, and they brought me back in shackles and cuffs. And I get back there, and the captain's sitting behind his desk, black hat, white shirt, gold badge, arms crossed, sitting behind the desk, with a little mean mug on his face, a little scowl. And he's like, "Mr. Babcock, how long you been locked up?" And I'm like, 2 years. And I'm sitting there in the back of my mind like, man, they're trying to get me to tell on somebody for something, or somebody told on me for something. That's what I was thinking. And I was like, I ain't telling nobody nothing, or whatever.
Yeah.
And and so he's like, well, when you come back here, it's never good news, right? And I was like, hey, look, man, I ain't got nothing to say. Just throw me back in my cell, man. And he's like, Mr. Babcock, we got a phone call over the weekend. You got a phone call earlier today. Your mom found your sister in a bathroom dead with a needle in her arm. And that was it. And it was like, so like I wasn't expecting that. And so like I went from, I remember just sitting there and like being shocked, and then just like it hitting and just like tears bursting out or whatnot. And they end up giving me a 30-second phone call to my mom. I'm sitting there saying like, I love you. She's telling me love me. And then the phone hangs up, and then I go back into my cell, and I asked to be put in a cell by myself because I had a cell. I said, hey, is there any way, because the hole wasn't filled up. I said, anyway, I can get a cell by myself. And the COs were cool about that, and they actually let me get a cell by myself. And for the next 3 days, I sat there, cried, thinking about all the, all the memories with my sister, all the hurtful things I've ever done to her, that's sitting there eating at me, all these things, right? And then I remember on that 3rd day, though, I got up and I was just like, God, I don't know what the reason is for me to even be here right now. Like, my life ain't looking great, but I know there is a reason, or else I wouldn't be here. What can I do right now to find happiness and peace? And that's the question I asked. And that question, I didn't have, a whole lot of options, but I was, I'm trapped in this 8x10 cell. I could walk 3 steps this way and 3 steps that way. That's about as far as I'm going. I didn't have a whole lot of freedoms in that cell, but I had the freedom of choice, freedom to govern it how, my way. And so what I did is I completely cleaned the like I'm talking about, like to the T. OCD don't have shit on me when it comes to this. Like, to the T, had a routine where every single day was doing the same exact thing at the same exact time. Toothpaste got put in the same exact spot in the cell. Like, when the nurse came around, like everything to the T, right? And there was order, and there was discipline, and there was order in the cell. And I had a routine. I was clean. I was working out, taking care of myself. Long story short, reading the Bible. And long story short, at the end of this 60-day in the hole, I felt at that point in my life more at peace than I've ever felt in my life. And I felt like the first time, when I got out, I felt like the first time like I could stand on my own, like, because before, like, I would always do stuff to try and fit in, and I would do really stupid, dumb things and get in trouble in prison and even before prison to fit in with the other people. And now from that moment on, I never felt like I never went and did stupid shit to try and be accepted by someone else. You know what I'm saying? After that, like little stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the lesson though, man, was like, man, I couldn't control the fact that my sister had died. Like, I can't control that. But I got to control my
Right.
response. I got to control how I responded to that. I could have sat there and been
Yeah.
miserable and chose to just keep going down the drain, but I chose to do the next right thing and do the next best thing that's going to help me find happiness, peace. And the second lesson in that, and I'll wrap it up here, was asking the right questions, man. Like, you ask a question, you automatically are looking for the answer. So if you ask the wrong questions, why does this always got to happen to me? You're going to get the wrong answers. But if you ask empowering questions, what can I do right now to find happiness and peace? Or what's the next best step that I can take that's going to bring me closer to my goal? Or whatever, right? You ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers.
Yeah. Man, that's amazing. So was this time, after you found out your sister passed away, was that your first God encounter, or had you had God encounters before then?
I've had God encounters before then. That was probably like a stronger, deeper one. Like, felt so close to God and at peace in myself in that time. Like, at the end of there, like, I was so happy just because I got out the hole, and I was just so grateful just to have warm food 3 times a day. And I would see like a bird on the prison yard and just like be appreciative of the nature and of having life, just little things. I was grateful for so grateful
Yeah.
for the little things, man. And it was just a real peaceful time. After going through some really dark time.
So when did the other God encounters come?
When did the other what?
God encounters. When you said that it was one of them.
Yeah.
When did, like, throughout your life? I mean, it sounds like quite, the story is incredible, but you mentioned that there were other God encounters. When were those, and how did those
So
come?
many, like, dude, like one that came up in one of my MDMA assisted psychotherapy sessions that I had forgotten all about. This was before I went to prison. We were going around and robbing crack dealers. Man, I was smoking crack, and we had went in Kinloch. Kinloch, right next to Ferguson. It's not a good neighborhood, and it's even worse than Ferguson. And we were going in there, and the crack dealer would put his. I'm driving, and I got my buddy in the front, and our plan is they put his hand in the car to show us which rock we wanted to pick, which $20 rock we wanted, and we smacked the rocks out of his hand and drive off. And I'm driving off, and guns hitting the car, it hit the car and stuff, and like
Wow.
God had my back in that moment, because I don't have any other answer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and like I just
Yeah.
remember in that moment, like this, like thinking like it was like surreal, like it wasn't even real. And like, I don't know. It's hard to explain that, you know what I'm saying? But you know how when you feel like there's nothing that you can't explain, like there's nothing else that got us through this moment right now but God. Like, I don't know how to explain it. That was another one. But many moments like that, near-death experiences, stuff like that. But also just so many times in my life, like where it looks like things are gonna crumble, and then like a miracle happens last minute. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I know, for me at least. That's I believe 1,000% in God. And I know not everybody does, and I don't try and push that upon everybody, but I do believe in God.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so after that, encounter, in the prison, where you went OCD and cleaned up everything, were there any other God encounters that helped you along the way?
Yeah, well, there wasn't no like big moment like that, but there was moments just like from there, like I felt like God was with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, and
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah.
but then that also did kind of go away though too. That also did go away during my sentence. It was there for like a good 6 months, but like then I stopped feeling as close to God and kind of started going back into the negativity that was around me. Getting involved with just doing stupid stuff or whatever. But like gambling or whatever, or or whatever to pass my time in prison and whatnot. But wasn't never like it wasn't to where I was like, oh, I don't believe in God. I always believe in God, but I didn't feel like that strong connection and relationship and that peace like I did so strongly shortly after my sister passed.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been an amazing conversation, and you've got an amazing story. I'm excited for what you're doing with Alpha Underdog. Everybody be sure to check out his website. I'll put a link also in the notes. I'll also share this on social media. And so be sure to connect with Zach and support what he's doing. And proud of you, man. Thank you for being on. And this was a great conversation.
Paul, thank you for having me on the show today. I'm super blessed, super grateful that you had me on this platform. Very grateful. Thank you, man.
All right. You have a good one. Take care.